Hi everybody, and welcome back to the Texas Suburban Homestead. We're starting a new video series, and in this first episode we're going over hand tools every guy should be familiar with and have in their toolbox. So let's get going. Hi everybody, and welcome back to the channel. For those of you who are new, my name is Adam. For those of you who are returning, thanks for coming back. It's been a while since I uploaded some videos. Little bit of background. I'm a guy who loves learning new things. Don't always love mastering new things, but I love learning new things. So I've acquired a good bit of skill on a lot of different things. I'm no expert at anything. So if you're coming to this channel for expert advice, I'm sorry, I'm not your guy. However, make a long story short, I do love being a dad. So in my love of being a dad, I get to be a dad to a wonderful young son, and he's getting older. And so as he gets older, I get to take a lot of the things that I've been learning throughout the course of my life and pass them on to him. And so I love teaching. I'm a teacher by nature, and so I get to teach my son these things. In teaching my son, I realized there's a lot of boys and young men out there who may not necessarily have a dad to be able to teach them a lot of the knowledge and skills that I've acquired over my life. Please understand, this is not an indictment on anybody. This is not a political statement. This is one man who is trying to help any boy or young man who might need the help. That's all it is. If you turn it into a political statement, that's on you. I'm just putting this out there for any boy or young man who might want or need the help. So, with that being said, we're starting a new video series. I've got a bunch of them planned. This is our first episode. In planning my first episode, I thought, where should we go? Let's start really basic. Basic hand tools. Hand tools that every guy should have, know how to use, and know the basic lingo about, okay? So that's where we're starting. In doing so, if you have tools or if you have skills that you might want to learn, leave a comment down below. I'm always looking for new ideas. If you have something that you've kind of got an inkling you might want to learn about, leave a comment down below. And while you're at it, go ahead and like and subscribe, because we're going to have a lot of these coming out over the next weeks, months, hopefully years if I can get to it. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get going on some basic hand tools and some lingo surrounding them. All right, so the first thing you need to have in your toolbox is a hammer. There's lots and lots and lots and lots of different kinds of hammers out there. The main ones that you're going to see are what's called a rip hammer and a claw hammer, okay? They're technically both claw hammers. This is the claw, but this one's called a rip hammer because it's a little straighter. That's mostly what most guys will have, but there's dead blow hammers and framing hammers and ball peen hammers, soft face hammers, there's specialty hammers, there's drywaller hammers, there's mason hammers, upholstery hammers, sometimes they're called tack hammers, but there's lots of different kinds of hammers out there. The ones I technically use the most are the rip hammer and the ball peen. The ball peen is really good for doing a little bit of metal work because it allows you to move the metal around with the peen part. But 9 times out of 10, the only hammer you'll need is a good rip hammer. This is an Estwing. I'll put a link for it down below. It's 20 ounces. It's a good weight. Most claw hammers will be about 16 ounces. So if you want a little lighter hammer, you can go with a claw hammer. You can get a 16-ounce rip hammer, but they're a little bit harder to find usually just in your big box stores. You can do a lot of things with a hammer. It's not just for driving nails. You can drive nails, of course, but you can also use it to make basic measurements. I've got a little mark on mine at about 1 foot. So all I did was just measure from the bottom up and put a Sharpie mark on it. So it's a quick measurement. You can do any different number of measurements on that. You can use the claw itself to straighten things. You can straighten bent blades, you can straighten nails. It's a really useful tool that you can get a lot out of, and you can do some pretty fine adjustments with a lot of hammers. And you don't have to spend a lot to get a good hammer. This Estwing, not a huge expenditure, and I've had it for many, many years. You can see it's terribly worn. So you can use it to do a lot of different things. And I would invest in a good one, because a good one's really well balanced. And I say good, I mean, let's not break the bank with it. Spend a little bit more than, $5 or $10 at the dollar store. It'll last you a long time. One of the big things I always recommend is you don't have to buy the most expensive tool, but buy a good tool. It'll last you a lot longer, and it will actually be better for you and be less frustrating. A few basic things to remember whenever you're using a hammer. Let the weight of it be your friend. You can really wail on things, but if you're just first learning how to use a hammer, and this is something I learned trying to teach my son how to use a hammer, you want to really force it in. If you're hammering a nail, you want to really force that nail in. It's a 20-ounce hammer for a reason. Let the weight be of benefit to you. Another thing that I've had to teach my son is he wants to really focus on the hammer in hand. Focus on the nail. Focus on the target that you're aiming for. That will really help you be able to apply the maximum amount of force, even if you're not swinging hard, because you'll get good solid strikes. A good solid strike is better than 3 misses and 1 really good one. Okay? Have a bunch of good ones. Whenever you're looking at nailing something, if you're using a bigger nail, go ahead and blunt the tip. Blunting the tip will keep you from splitting the wood sometimes. It's basically the equivalent of drilling a pilot hole. Whenever you're going to hold the hammer, hold it like you're shaking somebody's hand. It's a really good way to kind of reach out. I'm left-handed, so sorry. Reach out and grab it like you're shaking somebody's hand. It's good to have a good firm grip on it. You can choke up if you need to. But there's actually, in a good hammer, there's a little swell down here. You can actually have that swell there is where you want to grab it. But if you're not comfortable, you can choke up. This was just a Walmart hammer. There's no swell on the bottom of it, and so it tends to get a little loose in your hand. So be aware of stuff like that. When you're pulling nails, be sure and start the nail with your claw. But then, so you don't damage whatever you're pulling it out of, go ahead and get a little block. That way that little block can help you not mar the surface of whatever you're pulling the nail out of, if you need to. If you're just doing some basic demo or some basic stuff, I'm using a 2x4 here. A lot of people want to recommend that framing hammer. A framing hammer is good. They have a waffle head, and a lot of nails, framing nails, will have a waffle pattern on the head as well. It actually works out really well, because that waffle on the head of the hammer and the waffle on the head of the nail work really well so that you can get good contact on there. The problem with a framing hammer is the framing hammer is a lot heavier. This one I have is 20 ounces. Most framing hammers are way heavier than that. So if you're just starting off, if you're not a framing carpenter, go ahead and get a little bit lighter hammer. The smooth face is fine. It will help you if you are just learning. You're going to have a lot of overstrikes. You're not going to mar the finish as bad. Okay, that big waffle head on that framing hammer, you're coming down on it. And when you make the strike on the nail, it's great. But if you overstrike, your wood is going to be damaged. Okay, so there's some pluses and minuses with the framing hammer, but if you're just starting off, stick with a regular 20-ounce claw hammer. I say claw, I mean rip hammer. But just so you can get used to it. That framing hammer is a big jump. Even I don't use a framing hammer, and I've used hammers off and on all my life. All right, next on our list of things every guy's got to have. You don't have to have a ton of them, but you need to have some screwdrivers, okay? I will say part of my job is safety, And one of the things I always want to remind people is, people argue. I know the comments are going to be full of this comment, but screwdrivers are not chisels and they should not be sharpened. Get a chisel, sharpen a chisel. Don't use a chisel as a screwdriver, use a screwdriver as a screwdriver, okay? Use the tool for the way it was intended. But with our screwdrivers, you've got a couple of main kinds, all right? So I'll have these coming up, but I'll also have them here. You have a Phillips, you have a slotted, you have Allen, and then you have what's called Torx, okay? The main difference in all of these is that the Torx and the Allen come in very specific sizes, okay? Both SAE, which is inches, and metric, which is millimeters, okay? I know there might be some argument, technically these are called Allen wrenches. I get it, but you put it in something and you drive a screw in with it. So I'm including it with the screws. But if you look at what you need, all right, you don't need a ton of them. Get a couple of different sizes. Get a moderate and get a small Phillips. Get a moderate and get a small. Here, let me reach around behind you here. Okay. That is a slotted, and that is a slotted. This one is much smaller than this one. I don't need 50 different screwdrivers. Although I have 50 different screwdrivers, you don't really need them. But get maybe 2 sizes of each. Get a regular size and a small one of each of the Phillips and slotted. Where you're going to spend most of your investment on screwdrivers is, number one, getting a magnetized tip. All right, that is a game changer. I've got them on my drill driver sets. I've got them on my screwdrivers. My Allen wrenches are not magnetized, but I have Allen wrenches in my drill driver set, which we'll talk about that in a coming video, by the way, so remember to subscribe. But I've got those Allen wrenches and they're all magnetized except this. These are my only non-magnetized ones. That's a game changer. Basic use. You don't have to have a lot of different sizes because screws technically don't come in a lot of different sizes. Yes, I understand if you're an expert and you're watching this video, this is the size chart, I get it. But for most guys around the house, we don't really care about that, okay? We care about, can I drive a screw, can I remove a screw, all right? Get the size slotted and Phillips that closest matches the size screw that you've got and you'll be fine, okay? I've stripped a few screws. If you strip one, there's little kits you can buy to fix it and pull it out. It's fine, it's not a hard thing. But what you do need to understand is that both Torx and Allen come in different sizes, okay? So you see, I have 2 sides of this. I have my metric, which is my millimeters, and my SAE, which is my inches. I've got a bunch of different sizes of both of these because you'll run into a lot of different size Allen wrenches or Allen screws, okay? You gotta match it to the right size, otherwise you'll strip the screw, it won't drive, and you'll be stuck, okay? That happens pretty regularly if you don't use the right size. So, get you one of these sets. Again, I've got a link down below in the description. I picked these up at Home Depot. You can get a set at Amazon, which is where I've got the list down below. Just a couple of bucks, it doesn't charge you much. The Torx, on the other hand, they vary. It's a fairly new head of screw, so you have to have the certain driver bit to get them. A lot of, see, I just have them in these little drill driver bits. I don't actually have screwdrivers that look like this with the Torx head. I found that I don't really need it. I can get it done with the drill driver as much as I need. So get the right size. They're not very expensive. Don't go out and buy huge sets of screwdrivers. It is so tempting. You go to Home Depot, you go to Lowe's, you go to Amazon. You can buy 15 different screwdrivers. You don't really need 15 different screwdrivers. You need a couple of Phillips, a couple of slotted, and buy a set of the Torx and buy a set of the Allen, and you'll be fine, okay? If you want to get some different length screwdrivers, that's fine. but don't go out and buy a 15 screwdriver set. You don't really need it, okay? Get what you need, use them well, and you'll be just fine. So the last thing every guy needs is this kind of other set of hand tools, all right? When you look at this other, it basically comes down to a couple of things. You need some pliers, you need some wrenches, and if you want to take the extension of the wrench, you can get a ratchet or socket, a ratchet socket combo, sorry. So let's just take a look at the pliers. You can go out and you can buy any number of pliers that you want. Most guys have these laying around. If I told you how many times I've used these in the last 10 years, it would probably be less than 5 because they're just not that useful. You can't apply a lot of force. They're not very adjustable. So what I would recommend is buy you a couple of channel locks, all right? I have these small ones. I have some big ones and I have some small ones. I would recommend a small set and a big set. These are Husky from Home Depot. I have some Channel Lock brand channel locks. They're called channel locks because if you look, you can see the little channels that allow for the adjustability. These are really good. You can apply a lot of force. They're very tough. I have never broken a pair of channel locks. Go ahead and spend a little bit extra money. Get the Channel Lock brand, get a small one, get a big one. That will have you set as far as basic pliers go. If you want to get into kind of the specialty pliers, I wouldn't recommend more than 2 other things for most guys. Get a pair of wire cutters, all right? If you intend on doing some electrical work, I have these and I have another smaller set. These are from Klein Tools. They're really good working with electrical stuff. Because of the way they're designed, it's easy to manipulate the wires, and they have a wire cutter in there. Outside of that, the only other pair of pliers that you need besides the small and big channel lock, and when I say big, they make channel locks that are this big. Just a normal size that, you know, that yay long that's adjustable. Don't go crazy on the big, okay? The last thing you'll need outside of your wire cutters and your channel locks is a pair of needle nose pliers. These are good for fine work. Again, you're not applying a lot of force with these, but what you do have is you can get little things, all right? This is the way you use pliers. I know most people want to grab it like that, but you can't open them like that. So you're going to have to grip them like that, all right? So that's our basic pliers. Moving on to wrenches. You can get you can get 10 times as many different kinds of wrenches as you can pliers. But the basic wrenches that you're going to need, all right? Most guys around the house will have this, okay? That's a crescent wrench. It's actually a Crescent brand crescent wrench. It's adjustable. It has a little screw that opens and closes it. I have a small one and I have a medium-sized one. I wouldn't call this big. But I would go ahead and buy a good brand like this Crescent or Craftsman would be a good brand. Go ahead and buy that good brand because they have less what we call slop, okay? Slop is when you move this little screw, nothing happens, all right? So a cheaper brand, you're gonna move it and nothing's gonna happen. And so what that minimizes is your adjustability to the nuts and bolts that you're trying to turn, okay? If you're trying to tighten a nut or a bolt, you want good adjustability and really fine movement. And the better brands, I would say this is probably a mid to high level brand. I know there's going to be discussion in the comments. Don't go out and buy Matco. Don't go out and buy Snap-on. If your career depends upon it, absolutely, go spend that money. But for guys around the house, this or a Craftsman will be all that you need, okay? And I would recommend getting a couple of them just simply because sometimes you'll need to tighten a nut and you need to hold the bolt at the same time, all right? So go get you a couple. It allows for the adjustability. The other type of wrench that you can go out and buy, okay, this is just a Craftsman, but this is an open end and a boxed wrench, okay? You can buy these where they have both open or both boxed. I bought it with the combo here. But what you'll have to recognize is with these, you have to buy specific sizes. These are non-adjustable. We talked about in our Allen wrenches and our Torx, you have sets that are both metric and standard, okay? So inches and millimeters. You gotta buy these. So if you're gonna buy these, be ready to make a decent investment because you're gonna have to buy a bunch of them, all right? Most guys around the house, unless you're working on engines, which I work on my lawnmower engines sometimes, I work on my truck sometimes, I find these to be useful just for the simple fact of that is a big difference in usability. I can get my hand in a lot tighter places with this than I can with that. So, the last thing that we have, what we call ratchets and sockets, all right? This is a ratchet, okay? I've got some video here of using a ratchet, but that's the ratchet, okay? This is a socket. You put the socket onto the ratchet. So let's take a look at using the video. You'll hear the click. The click is you have little teeth in here, okay? You'll hear it on the video as well, but that is loose. Going the other way is tight, okay? You can get both coarse and fine tooth ones. So the fine one, you can move, this one is a coarse, has to move a couple of degrees. Fine ones, very fine, but you can't apply as much force, okay? It's just the basic rule of it. I got a Craftsman. They're really a good investment. They're a little more pricey. Again, I think I paid 70, 80 bucks for mine. Sorry, bald guy sweating here. It's Texas in the summer, what can I say? But it's $70 or $80, that's well worth it. So there you have it. Those are the basic hand tools that every guy should have. You have the really basic ones up to the ones you could spend a little bit of money on, all right? So keep in mind, start with the basics. Learn the basics, learn them really well. From there, you can move on to anything, but learn the basics. And that's what we're doing in this first episode. So that's it. Those are the basic hand tools every guy should understand and know some lingo about, all right? If you're interested in this kind of video, go ahead and like and subscribe, click the bell icon, that way you can get notified whenever I post a new one. We're gonna have a lot of different topics. We're gonna go a lot over tools, some DIY, basic guy stuff, how to interact with other guys, how to shake hands, how to tie ties, how to shave, basic lawn care, basic engine type stuff that you need to know. Again, no expert level, but I'm going to get you to where you can converse with other guys about this stuff, okay? So, hope you enjoyed it. Hope it was helpful. We'll see you next time.